We are calling this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Plainville Board of Education, Monday, November 1st at 5 p.m. And their order of business is discussion of possible action concerning a grievance filed by the CSEA, paraprofessional and tutors. So that was probably the most difficult thing I have to do for the moment. And so I'm going to turn the speaking over to Mr. Lepage first, I would assume.
Well, so the board would basically hear the complaint from the CSEA typically first, and then, you know, if you'd like, I can also share my perspective on it while it's in public session, and then you could go into executive session with whoever you decide to invite in and for further consideration. But so I would give the floor to Frank and the CSEA, if that's okay, to share the grievance, the reason for the grievance, any details from your perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, so what I propose is that I read the grievance as it was submitted, as the substance of it, pretty much that's pretty much the best explanation that we can give. And also, if we may, I would like, after I read the grievance, to have Mrs. Ann Grossi to, just for the sake of record, give us a little background on exactly what the tutor duties are that are being affected by this grievance. And also, again, if agreeable, I have Jennifer Clark, who is also a tutor, who I would like to just ask a few questions concerning the effect of this grievance on the tutors, just to give everybody in the board, you know, the proper frame of mind of what exactly is going on. So, okay. The grievance itself reads the following. Dear Mrs. Tyrell and members of the board, the following is to formally submit a grievance in accordance with level 3 of the grievance procedure of the paraprofessionals tutors on RBT's contract. On September 7th, 2021, the paraprofessionals and tutors union filed the level 2 institutional grievance. Institutional meaning that it affects more than one person in the bargaining unit, with the superintendent of schools, Mr. Stephen Lepage, regarding the use of tutors to serve as substitute teachers at the elementary schools in Plainville. In that grievance, the union argued that during the 2020-2021 school year, it had signed a memorandum of understanding with the Board of Education as part of the COVID-19 crisis and its effect on the district. As part of said MOU, tutors in the bargaining unit were being used as substitute teachers since the district was having difficulties hiring substitutes during the COVID-19 pandemic. As mentioned above, the term of this MOU was for the 2021 school year, 2020-2021 school year, sorry. The expiration of this agreement coincided with the expiration of the paraprofessional and tutor contract term. So the parties discussed the subbing at formal contract negotiations. During these discussions, the union was told that measures were being taken for the 2021-2022 school year and that tutors were not going to serve as substitutes going forward. As a result, the parties reached an agreement without addressing this issue of subbing in the contract. 2 days into the start of the 2021-2022 school year, tutors were required to serve as substitutes at several elementary schools, which triggered the filing of the attached grievance. Mr. Lepage met with the union as part of the grievance process and offered to submit an MOU proposal that would delineate subbing guidelines as well as financial compensation going forward for the tutors that sub. Unfortunately, The union cannot agree at this point with this type of arrangement. The use of tutors as substitutes is having a negative effect on the tutor's workday and assignments. Some of these effects include, but are not limited to, one, the assigned student of the pooled tutor is or are not receiving Tier 2 instruction in reading and math. Two, the tutors are now being forced to show up earlier to work as they are essentially on call and have to check if they are going to sub that day or not. Number three, the frequency of the subbing itself is very disruptive. Some tutors have subbed 3 days consecutively per week. Four, the subbing completely interrupts the flow of the tutor schedule with the assigned students. The union totally understands that the district has a hiring issue and a lack of substitutes. This is why we agreed to do it on the MOU the previous year. But, quote, it is not worth to undress a saint to dress another, end of quote. Using tutors simply transfers the problem to somewhere else. The tutors in Plainville Public Schools serve a very sensitive group of students in our community, and ultimately they are the ones being negatively affected by this situation. At this point, having the tutor sub only perpetuates the problem and promotes procrastination from the district in finding a permanent solution to the issue. It is simply too easy for a school principal who is in a bind trying to solve a problem to pull a tutor who is already in the building to sub. The tutor has a very defined and specific job description, one that many of them are not able to fulfill due to this issue. The job description does not include subbing, which is why we are requesting that the use of tutors as substitutes stops and that they are allowed to do the job that they were hired for. If Anne could please give us a little bit of her time.
Hi, my name is Ann Grossi. I'm the chapter president of the CSA Union of Paraprofessionals, Tutors, and RBTs. Our bargaining unit consists of paraprofessionals, RBTs, registered behavior technicians, and tutors, about 103 people. Each of these job positions plays an integral role in supporting the students of Plainville Community Schools. In the elementary schools, there are K tutors, kindergarten, math, and literacy tutors. These are the tutors that have been asked to substitute for classroom teachers. They also provide Tier 2 instruction in students grades K to 5 in reading and math. The state of Connecticut mandates and outlines a framework for SBRI, Scientific Research-Based Interventions for RTI, Response to Intervention, to meet the academic and social-emotional learning of all students. There is a 3-tier model for implementing SBRI. Tier 1 are classroom teachers, and the students receive high-quality instruction. Tier 2 is targeted interventions for students that need additional support. That is the service we provide. Tier 3 are intensive interventions, which is usually considered special education. How SBRI is implemented in all schools may be very unique, but I think it's important to give you an example of how this process works. And I can speak to this for literacy and reading at Linden Street School. For instance, in September, or late August, probably September, our instructional resource teachers, who are our immediate supervisors, look at all the data of students in grades K to 5 at Linden Street School. Students in K to 3 are given universal screen benchmark reading assessments. We use the Acadians. These are given in the fall, winter, and spring, and actually the literacy tutors administer these tests to students in K to 3. The IRTs also look at their independent reading level, their IRLAs from the previous spring. Students in grade 4 and 5 are currently taking the iReady assessment tests on their Chromebooks. They'll look at the SPARTA balance and other data from the classroom teachers. Why do we do this? So we can determine what students need in reading in grades K to 5. Those IRTs crunch this data, formulate groups for small group targeted instruction. At Linden, we have a CST meeting, a child study team meeting, which is given which each grade level teachers, tutors, school principals, special education teachers, and the IRTs, where small groups are formulated for targeted reading instruction. These groups, with the literacy tutors fulfill, meet for approximately 20 to 30 minutes, 4 days per week for instruction, and 1 day a week is reserved for progress monitoring. Because if we have a targeted instruction, we want to make sure that students is making progress. And one way for us to measure this is to do progress monitoring, which is reserved for the 5th day. We meet with these student groups for 6 to 8 weeks, and then we meet together at CST to see how students are making progress. An example might be, perhaps there's a group of 2nd grade students that we notice based on the data that they need a lot of support in decoding. Then a group of students would be formulated and we would use instructional materials such as the power of print or Road to the Code to build their decoding skills. And then we would pick progress monitoring tools such as nonsense word fluency, which could measure if we're building their decoding skills to improve their reading skills. Perhaps it would be a fluency group and we would choose to use the instructional material of Read Naturally, and we would use an Acadience progress monitoring tool. We would measure the students' fluency through oral reading fluency to see if they're making progress. Then we meet together again in 6 to 8 weeks. Obviously, the goal is to have the student make the progress and meet goal, and then they would be dismissed from Tier 2 instruction. Sometimes we see that a student is making progress and it would be best if the student remains in that intervention to continue making progress. In addition, sometimes students don't make progress, and so we might shift the focus of instruction. And if students do not make progress, this data is turned over to special education, and often decisions are made on whether a student special education makes a decision to whether a student goes to testing, as well as classroom data at all. This is a streamlined process. Feels very strongly about the fidelity of this process. And it's a very important component, because if our interventions are not consistent, then how can we even determine the effectiveness of the interventions we're given? Although we understand that, that Plainville is in a bind with subbing, and we know everybody is across the state and across the country. If our goal in the district this year is to accelerate and make up learning loss due to the COVID pandemic, that is an imperative that the tutors in our district continue to provide the services in which they were hired. And that is to give consistent Tier 2 instruction and reading math in the elementary schools. Thank you.
All right, now I am going to call on Mrs. Jennifer Clark. I'm going to be asking her a few questions just to give the board more clearer picture of what's going on from the perspective of the tutors that are, actually doing these functions. Jennifer, how you doing?
Well, how are you?
Good. For the record, could you please state your name and your place of work, please?
My name is Jennifer Clark, and I am a tutor at Taflon Elementary School.
How long have you worked for Plainville Community Schools?
I'm very proud to say that in December, it will be 21 years.
Okay, so you know that the 2020-2021 school year was the now infamous, I would say, pandemic lockdown and pandemic year. Would you agree that that's when this subbing situation began?
Yes.
And once it did, just on average, in a normal work week, how often would you say that you were subbing? Or were subbing? Go ahead.
During the said COVID year?
Yes.
2 times a week, once being the least, and as much as 5 times a week, one time.
So a whole week subbing, where you were just subbing, you were not doing your duties as a tutor.
Correct.
Okay. Would you say that this is just for the sake of time? Obviously, Anne went into the details of what the job entails. You heard what Anne said about tier 2 instruction, etc. Would you agree that that's consistent with the work of a tutor?
Yes.
And how was that work affected by the subbing that was going on?
Well, normally I work 9 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. And per a verbal agreement, as my understanding is, between the union and I don't want to misstep, I think Superintendent Lepage, that we agreed for subbing. We would hold the hours of 8:15 in the morning to 3:45 in the afternoon with a 20-minute lunch. It greatly disrupts the students. I work with students based on their needs, which are identified by the teachers, and which support the curriculum. For example, our new math program. When pulled to sub, which unfortunately is usually last minute, it leaves many students without a second source of assistance. This unfortunately also snowballs as tutors can be assigned up to 3 and 4 classes in their schedule. So if you kind of go based on an 18 student sized class, that potentially means that 54 to 72 students in a day are unsupported in tier 1 and tier 2 instruction. When pulled to sub, which was certainly often, tutors also tend to lose a sense of the instruction that the teachers have progressed on with in our absence. In addition, it also means that formal intervention groups are missed. Again, leaving students without the critical targeted support that they need for their educational performance. Being pulled to sub, unfortunately, also creates a lack of consistency, which is also essential for learning changes to occur. Time, unfortunately, is then spent with these children repeating material to play a bit of catch up. This means that the children may not make as much growth as they would with some consistent support.
Going in that same direction. So what happens to the students that you tend to when you are sub? Do you know? What happens? Do they get alternate instruction? Do they not receive the instruction? What happens?
Unlike classroom teachers, there aren't substitutes for tutors. So when we're not there, that support, because part of my job is supporting teachers and students within the classroom, neither get that support.
Okay, and on the other end of that, there's also the teachers that are relying on you as part of the 3-tier system. How is that affected as well?
So again, unfortunately, we're finding out last minute usually about the subbing. So when pulled to sub, tutors have to inform teachers last minute that they won't be supporting them or their students in class. The teachers, of course, have created instruction incorporating tutors into its structure. So for example, a teacher might have plans for, this is very common, small group rotations or some skill groups that they would like to see occur that day. And unfortunately, when tutors are pulled last minute to sub, it leaves the teacher scrambling to reframe the lesson. Sometimes creatively rescheduling for another day, or sometimes altogether abandoning that plan.
So it not only disrupts your duties, but it also disrupts theirs.
Yes.
Okay, and also in the grievance that I read, we mentioned the fact that you guys are working beyond what should be your normal work hours because you're essentially on call for subbing. For the record, also, it's important to note that Jennifer mentioned the verbal agreement. Yes, that was part of one of the things when we met with Mr. Lepage. It was mentioned that they were working these hours before and after their work time, and Mr. Lepage did agree to pay them during that time because they were in fact working. But again, it's beyond the contracted hours that are in the well, contracted hours, but redundant that it's in the contract. But my question to you, Mrs. Clark, is regarding how that affects you personally.
So initially, we were informed, well, again, from my school, I started to receive texts on my personal cell phone from the secretary in the office, and, you know, probably feeling the pressure to get our attention as early as possible. I didn't personally care for that. I requested that they please not text me on my private cell phone, which turned into sending me emails through work. But in order for me to know that, I would need to be checking my emails. So I started to feel pressured to check my email prior to when I normally would do it, which would be 9 o'clock when I get into my shift. It's also difficult because I'm not necessarily planning in my mind to be into work at 8:15. I'm scheduled for 9. Sometimes I can get there, sometimes I can't, but it also affects me on the either end because I've already in good faith scheduled things outside of my hours, and not anticipating staying late eats into, you know, things like doctor's appointments and things like that. Not knowing every day, you know, where we're being thrown into, you know, coming dressed up and then having to run out in the field with the kids in the muddy field, constantly being thrown into a new and different situation, feeling unprepared, you know, it really starts to affect you emotionally, and it really creates an unhappy employee.
Thank you, Jennifer. To conclude this part, I just want to stress that the point that we're trying to make to you, the board, here is that beyond the technical issue, that this is in fact not bargaining unit work, and it's a duty that does not belong to the tutors, as it were, which is obviously implied in the grievance. It really goes beyond, because this is not a simple issue of one extra duty that they do as part of their job. This is being done in lieu of their job. They're doing this by not doing what they were assigned to do. And while the effect is not as evident as when a class is left without a sub, it's equally as important. And I cannot stress that part of it enough. When these people are subbing, students are not getting their required education. And while we can definitely understand the situation that Plainville was going on, especially last year, and even this year, we really cannot continue with this practice as it is. In fact, it is my understanding that the district has acquired the necessary number, or what used to be the normal number of subs per school that you traditionally have, and as a result, that has had a positive impact on how the parents are asked to pull. We have to continue. We are asking that you continue to push in that direction instead of having the paras not do their job. And thank you all for your time.
Okay. Are there any, does anyone have any questions at this point so far? Jennifer, can I ask you to clarify something for me? You said, I think you mentioned how many students you serve usually every day, and I think I missed that part.
Right. So my job, again, as mentioned before, is a mixture of pushing into a classroom and supporting the teacher within her tier 1 instruction, as well as being assigned intervention groups, which those in themselves can be 3 groups of 3 students. But when I'm in the classroom, we're looking at a class size anywhere from, say 18 to 21 children. So based on that idea of supporting tier 1 instruction in the classroom, and if you're assigned to multiple classes, if someone had 3 to 4 classes assigned to them, that tutor visited 3 or 4 classes, you could potentially be looking at 54 to 72 students in a day that aren't receiving tier 1 tutor support.
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's important to know that it's very difficult because in each school on how this is implemented is a little bit different and looks a little bit differently. For instance, at Linden, literacy supports tier 1 instruction in kindergarten through a literacy rotation, but then kindergarten tutors also take on additional students that need support in phoneme or phonological awareness skills. I would say for, and actually it goes with math as well, I would say in literacy and math, I would say the caseload, if you're talking about a tier 1 literacy rotation in kindergarten, that would be the whole kindergarten class. And then in grades 2 to 5, and actually, again, because of the data that we're seeing right now, we would traditionally sometimes see a group for 30 minutes, but we're doing 2 20-minute blocks right now at Linden because the need, listen, I mean, the kids have had a very tough, 18 months just as everyone else has, and we're trying to accelerate that learning. So currently at Linden in literacy and math, during those literacy and math blocks, tutors are seeing doing literacy and math. They're trying to keep group sizes to 3, so it could be their case, anybody's caseload is well over, could be, 20, and then not counting the tier 1 as well. So it's kind of a difficult thing to say because everyone does it, each school does it a little bit differently. And it's implemented.
But I appreciate that explanation because that makes, that gives us a better sense of exactly who's impacted. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I do have one quick question. Are tutors generally assigned 1 grade level, or are they assigned multiple grade level? Is a tutor, say, just at kindergarten or 1st grade, or just at 5th grade, or do tutors normally?
So actually, there's usually only 1 K tutor per elementary school, and their focus is primarily kindergarten. All the other tutors, again, every school is different, but we do a tier 1 instruction in kindergarten. And then, so we see students in all grade levels, K to 5. Again, I couldn't speak that verbatim, but that's the idea, to see students in K to 5. And actually through the ESSER 3 grant, they hired an extra kindergarten teacher at each school for this, just for 1 year. So right now there are actually 2 kindergarten titled tutors. And actually, you know what? Everything's based on student need, to be perfectly honest, because our current K tutor, sometimes she services kids in the upper grades or lower grades, because if there's a space and she's available and students need, instruction in something, she'll hop in and do that as well. Listen, the tutors in our district are very highly qualified people. They all require a bachelor's degree. I would say about 20% of them are certified teachers and have chosen to do this job for these hours for this reason, and really supporting kids in literacy and math on the elementary level. And just keep in mind, there's tutors at the middle school and high school level too, but they have not been pulled to sub during the pandemic. This is only happening in the elementary schools.
Mm-hmm. It is still happening.
Yeah, that's why we're here, because we don't want it to happen anymore.
And I just had a question, like pre-COVID, were tutors called as subs before all of this? Often, or?
Not at Linden. I can't really speak to the other schools. You know, listen, I understand it's very challenging. I mean, Plainville used to just have a subbing pool, and now they moved to each elementary school is budgeted 3 building subs per school. And of course, I know interns used to, you know, we used to have college interns and stuff.
No. No. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's, you know, to say everyone's been through a challenge in the past, you know, it just keeps, you know, it sounds,
Cliche.
yeah, it sounds cliche, right? But it's just true. The impacts.
True.
Massive.
Yep.
I have, if I could, I just had 2 questions I wanted to ask. Jennifer, is there a pattern to when you're being pulled? Like, is it a certain time of the day or is it all different?
No patterns.
I'm sorry.
No patterns.
Okay. And have you seen the need decrease since the beginning of the year for you to be, are you being pulled less often now or no change?
Well, now that we finally have acquired 3 full building substitutes at Teflon, it has
Mhm.
greatly alleviated.
Okay. How many times are you pulled a week now?
So I have substituted twice.
Twice. Twice this week?
This school year.
You've substituted twice? Okay.
So
Last
just
year-
to,
Thank you.
Sorry.
just to give you some numbers, and you know, they're as accurate as they can be. I don't really have a lot of data on Wheeler right now, but like in September, there were 19 school days. Of those 19 school days, 10 of those days, tutors subbed in the elementary schools, in all 3, and in 2 of the elementary schools. In October, there are 20 school days, and at Linden and Teflon, tutors subbed 19 of those days.
For a full
Now,
day, for a full day, are you saying, or just stepping in for a classroom here and there? Because I have all the data from every school, and there's
It could be half day, full day. It could be pulled for PPTs. It could be
Yeah.
half day,
a
whatever.
lot of like.
She
there's a lot of, like,
said
one-
she was just referring to subbing in general, Stephen.
Okay, because yeah, I don't want to. I'll give all the data whenever the board chair is ready, but I have all the information to explain kind of who's been pulled, how frequently, what system's been used, why. So, you know, and all the efforts being done to try to avoid that at all costs, but being in a position where you have no other solution, short of trying to combine classes, which would be unsafe during COVID. So, I don't want to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure that the perception wasn't that there were 19 full school days where, you know, there was like six in one day on some days for 6 different PPTs where you needed a period of coverage to cover for teacher and there's no one else to cover. So I just wanted to explain that point.
So if there are any other questions of the the tutors, then I would say we could go, and Mr. Lepage can give us his information unless there's any other questions. Right. Take it away.
Thank you. First of all, you know, I do want to say that I do try to work in cooperation and collaboration with, you know, Mr. Pizarro, Frank, and CSEA members from our district. I think I've tried to do my best to support them from the beginning of this pandemic and keeping everyone fully employed, even if there wasn't anything for them to do. For some of the employees, you know, still getting their paychecks and making sure we did that even before the government said we had to, because it was the right thing to do. You know, I do care about our employees. I care about our tutors, our paras. I do not undervalue them or think that, you know, they should carry the burdens of the district. You know, in some situations, I have asked them to go the extra mile on certain things to help us out. Last year was largely the case. I can tell you that there was significant tutor coverage as substitutes, and it was a widely used practice to, I don't want to say survive the year, but to survive the year. We had, lots of situations of people being out sick and quarantine and not having subs. And, we raised the substitute teacher rate by $10 up from 85 to 95. We put in other incentives to have long-term subs paid at the I want to say bachelor's step 1 rate from the very beginning, instead of waiting the typical wait period, 45 days before they move up to that. So we did everything we could to really entice people to come on board, advertising with Stacy and promoting it. As you acknowledge, it's been really hard. It's been a very significant shortage of substitutes. This year was no different. I thought it would be when we were doing our negotiations last year with our regular contract. And I said, when it was asked if they'd be used as subs this year, I said, I did not see that. I did not see that would be there would be a need for that. I expected to be back. COVID was really dwindling down at the end of last year. As you remember, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I felt that we were going to be in a really good position with ESSER dollars to hire the subs we needed, and then Delta hit over in July. And then, for a number of reasons, there was a lack of interest in coming to work. And, regardless of the rate that we were paying, we were short. We couldn't fill the building sub positions. We would fill it and they would take another position for higher pay, the next week. Stacy could tell you how many people we hired and lost to the next highest bidder. So it's been a constant. You saw the HR sheet that I shared at the September board meeting, and I think it was 3 pages long. All the hiring that we're doing, we've hired, as Ann mentioned, a new kindergarten tutor to support the kindergarten students, in developing appropriately toward our goals of having them reading by grade 3. The work the tutors do is invaluable. That's why we have 103 tutors and paras in this district, which is unusual in my opinion. We have a very large, we get a lot of pressure from the town at times to reduce that. But I've fought to keep those positions, and I've added more positions, and because I know the value, so I don't want to say, I think what was you saying, Frank, about something about a cardinal, disrobing a cardinal or something? So I don't want to preach to the choir.
Dressing a saint by undressing another.
That's
It's a Portuguese thing.
I like it.
I'm not Portuguese though.
So, going along with saints, I don't want to preach to the choir, because I think everyone in this meeting knows how valuable our positions are. And I think our board fights for those positions as well when we go to bat with, with our town counterparts, and really share the value of all our employees, this group included. I don't want, I've tried to express this through our negotiations. I know, I have a good relationship with this group, and I have a good relationship with Frank. I don't want to use tutors. I made it, and after, I didn't realize it would be needed so quickly. When I received a grievance, I didn't even get a call. It went straight to a grievance on September, I think 4th, when, I guess it was the first time that a tutor was used as a sub at Tafalon, and with a new principal, with Alicia. So I called her and I said, what's going on? And she just had nobody to cover it. It wasn't because it was easier. We never do it because it's easier. It's not as good for kids, but it's the lesser of the evils, because the other alternative would be, combining a couple classes with one teacher in a very large space. And I'll have another grievance from a different union about that, during COVID times. So, we can't pull paraprofessionals. We don't pull paraprofessionals to do these coverages, even though there's been some flexibilities with that from the state, because they're, many or most of them have specific connections to IEP goals and required hours to fulfill those hours. So we'd violate IEPs. We don't want to violate, SRBI intervention plans. So we don't want to take away from those. It's the last thing we want when we're trying to recover kids from COVID. It's really it's a last resort. And when I met with my principals on September 20th, and I had already sent them information, but I told them, please, this is a last resort effort, last resort to use tutors to cover your class. If there's any other possible way of doing it, please look for those ways. And then if you have to use them, because we hadn't come to we were still talking about an MOU possibly, or coming to an agreement. about what would be required to, from this group to use tutors to sub occasionally. I said, do so judiciously and on a rotating basis. So I do have all the data. I asked our principals to share with me, who's been used, how many times, and for how long. I don't know that going through it, person by person, but I can tell you at Toflon, and I had them pull this as of October 13th, and I don't know that there's been much since then because we have been able to fill a lot of our building sub positions. But there have only been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There were 11 at Toflon. As you heard from Mrs. Clark, she covered 2 days. Mrs. Fagan covered 2 days. Actually, Mrs. Clark, I think you were 1.5 days, according to this anyway. Mrs. Fagan was 2 days. Mr. Hain was 2 days. So, and then it goes down to 1 day apiece, and it's on a rotation where we're not hitting up the same people, because that was something that was expressed to me as a concern. So Miss Mazzamaro was 1 day, Miss Rogan was 1 day, and some of these weren't for the full day. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full days and then a half day that were used in a position where we had no subs to cover their own positions. So there, a total of 11 up through October 13th. I'm not sure what's come in since then. I don't think there have been many, but this is at Wheeler School, and I can share this with you if you like, but September, I have one for PPT on September 16th. I have 2, one to cover a teacher who had a half day, so a half day, and then leaving early. So that was the same day. So one teacher was coming in late, one was leaving early, so that tutor covered the whole day. We had another one on the 20th, coming in, leaving early. Oh, that looks like the same one. That's the same one. So never mind, that was documented twice. So anyway, I guess the point is, on the 7th, there were 5, but they were all for 1 period to cover PPTs. 13th, we had 2 tutors who had to cover for 2 teachers that we didn't have enough. One was a half day, one was a full day, that we didn't have enough subs. Then the 14th was PPTs, so just single period coverages or half hour coverages. And then on the 18th, this one goes through the 18th. There were just one was a half hour, another was a full day, and another was a full day. So that's all of Wheeler. So there were, a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days where we used tutors. And then at Linden, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days as well through the 14th. 3 of those were half days, and then looks like 5 of those were full days of coverage for absences. And Mr. Wolowitz, I asked him about this, and he has a tutor who wants to be a teacher and is certified and is trying to build up the resume. So he had asked that teacher in particular if they wanted those types of experience to help build their resume. So, but again, they've been on a rotation. So I'm just looking at, I studied all this because I'm trying to find a solution. I'm trying to make sure we're not being overly, burdensome, and I know Mr. Pizzari, Frank, you talked to the contract, and well, the contract is silent on, what the job description is. The job description is really supporting kids tier 1 and tier 2 intervention. Whole school versus a small group. I know it's a different thing. I understand the hours. We did come to an agreement last year, and I did, of course, offer to pay for any hours beyond the normal tutor day. This year, I did talk about some kind of a compensation to help make this more agreeable. Again, only in the last case scenario where we need them. And my understanding was that it wasn't a money issue. It's more of a, kind of like Ms. Clark talked about, kind of quality of life and uncertainty about knowing what you're getting into in a certain day. And I totally understand that. So I guess, I don't want to say throw my hands up in the air, not knowing exactly what to do or how to cover this, but, I can't use paras. I'm not going to use IRTs because they have a very detailed and specific schedule that has district-wide impact. We have 2 IRTs are limited, and they have a co-teaching and a very specific schedule they're doing. It would be really difficult and detrimental to pull them. So I don't know what the other options are other than me putting on my teacher hat and going back in and subbing for a day, but you probably wouldn't want that to happen at this point. It wouldn't be very good anymore, I don't think. I don't think I have the energy for it. So I'm not sure if, I captured kind of all of the dilemma. There was a lot more happening last year. And we do have, you talked about the different tutors we have at each building. We have, at Wheeler, we have two math tutors. We have 3 literacy tutors. We have the kindergarten tutor, and they do have 20 minutes of, according to this, I had Tawana pull some information, but they have 20 minutes of planning time at the beginning of the day from 9 to 9:20. Tutors, including 1 temp for K and 2 are in classrooms across grade levels all day long, working with kids, circulating the room, tier 1 support. So there is a lot of tier 1 in addition to tier 2. And that's so teachers can work with their lowest performing students. And no offense to tutors, but we want our certified teachers to be the first line of intervention if we have a student with significant need. That's been our directive, is to try to use the teachers and use the tutors to free them up to do those small groups and have the tutors cover more of the tier 1 and lower level supports if at all possible. But tutors have been trained to implement tier 2 interventions. This is for 30 minutes with 1 to 3 students who move through their student intervention team process. At Linden, 3 math tutors, 4 literacy tutors, kindergarten tutor. They have time daily for data entry, 30 minutes of planning, 45 minutes with each grade level. Math is daily pull-out support during science and social studies block for 45 minutes. Literacy is daily push-in support during science social studies block for 45 minutes, and both math and literacy is for tier 2 intervention support. And then finally at Toflon, literacy, there's 4 tutors for literacy, 3 tutors for math, 1 kindergarten. For planning, the tutor planning time is scheduled for 30 minutes of the grade level planning time that they support. Overall tutor purpose is tier 1 and tier 2 intervention, academic support rather. Tutors assigned to 1 grade level or tier 1 support. Tutors are assigned tier 2 supports as necessary at any grade level based on skill areas and expertise. So tutor assignments were decided on with input from the tutors, from Michelle and Wendy and Kirsten. This is at Toflon, and example, let's see. So, they tried to be thoughtful in the way they assign tutors. I understand there's an impact, and I know there's a lot of discussion about the impact on kids, and that's what I care about a lot, most, as much as the impact on our staff. Are we asking our tutors to step up and help us with that at times to cover a PPT or a half-hour block of time? I really don't want tutors to be pulled for a full day unless it's an absolute emergency and we have no other option. But I think that's where we're at a challenge here, because I don't have another solution. Maybe now that we're fully staffed with building subs, we won't have as much of an issue, but to say it'll never happen again, it's hard for me to say that because I don't have another answer for that. If there is another answer, I'm open to considering that. Our tutors are paid between $24.63 an hour to $28.13 an hour. Our daily subs are paid $95 a day. So, I'm happy to get a daily sub in the building to cover a classroom so that our tutors can do the jobs they're hired for primarily. It's a better alternative for me. This is not in any way a money saving thing for us. If we could get substitute tutors, I'd get substitute tutors, but there's no such thing. We've hired a lot of people, and I'm hoping that we can see this drop off. It's unfortunate it got to a grievance. I understand that there was a lot of frustration from last year, and the incredible amount of coverage that was required, and that our tutors did a great job with. So I guess that's all I have to say. It's not being done without a lot of thought, a lot of consideration about impact on everybody, taking the lesser of the evils and trying to make it work the best we can in a really tough time for everybody. So I guess that's about it. I don't know if Stacy or Dave was having trouble getting on the link, but he joined us as well. Stacy and Dave have been involved in a lot of our meetings, not all of them, but some of them,
This
so they have some
is-
background.
Ms. Tyrell, if I may be allowed to respond quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to acknowledge that, and we've made mention of it throughout our presentation, that we understand that this is the result of a hiring shortage that's not only affecting Plainville community schools, but everywhere. This is not about Mr. Lepage saying that they are doing, that they have to do this because he says so, or whatever, whatever other case may be. We understand that there is an issue here. And part of the reason for taking it to this level and presenting it to the board is precisely so that we could show you exactly what the problem is, and hopefully the solutions that you might be able to achieve in substitution of what's going on right now. I mean, even as I hear, and again, we acknowledged in our presentation that because most schools have now filled their subbing positions, that subbing has been greatly reduced for the tutors. I'm hearing Mr. Lepage give the numbers of what's going on right now. And, if anything, it tells me that you have a subbing problem. You have a subbing problem, that's very serious. And again, it needs deeper solutions than what's going on right now, because it is affecting the kids. It is affecting the kids, and whether it's 1 hour or 1 day, again, they were hired to do this job. They're not doing it because they're doing something else not necessarily. That's not what they were hired to do. I really hope that that the board can intervene here and maybe come up with or suggest a better solution. As Mr. Lepage mentioned, we have a good relationship. We communicate. This is not we're not sparring here or anything like that. But we do have a lot of very frustrated tutors that have simply reached a point where they're like, I'm not doing my job effective. I'm not doing my job effective. And because of that, we are put in this position where we're presenting it to you. And, if we can't solve it here, then, we will have to continue on with the process where it leads. In this case, the next level, which is arbitration.
I don't know if you wanted to hear what efforts have been made to fill substitute positions. And we do have, in addition to the building subs, we still also use ASOP. So Stacy, I don't know if you could share. You mind just sharing? We've also reached out to colleges trying to get additional, kids. We have high school graduates who are in college. We're trying to get to come in if they're on college break, things like that. Go ahead, Stacey.
Right. Well, one of the great things that happened in the last month was the state had lifted the requirement to hold a bachelor's degree, which really opened it up to have some other candidates be able to apply and step into the positions. With that, we've been able to fill our building sub positions within the schools. I think there might be one school that's still looking for one, but is right there. We have a pool of subs, like daily subs, because as Mr. Lepage mentioned, we have our building subs and then we have daily subs who can decide when it's a good day for them to be able to come in and take a vacancy that might be out there. We were holding off on going into our substitute pool because that substitute pool was being looked at by the principals to see if maybe possibly they would be interested in the building sub position. So we have more people who are applying, which we're hoping to be able to get them on board and have them, be able to determine if they're able to cover positions. But I have noticed a huge decrease when I look at the frontline absences. Now, I will say the absences are a lot greater this year and, as they were last year because of COVID. And I'm not saying it's because of COVID. I don't know if people are just burnt out from COVID, but, there have been a lot of positions that need to be filled. But I'm confident based on what I'm seeing in the numbers in frontline that I think we'll be able to really be able to backfill those positions and really have that staff. And I'm already noticing a difference now. It's just starting to come together, I think, as Steve had mentioned. It was a ripple effect with other districts who had openings, and no sooner did we have somebody come on board that they'd submit their resignation letter 2 days later, and we were starting the process all over. We're just starting to see that end as we're moving forward. So I'm feeling good that we will have that going forward, but we're just getting there right now.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions from any of the board members after hearing any of the additional information? So we currently have 3 dedicated people per building. Is that what I'm hearing, Steve? Dedicated subs per building?
3 at all of them except 4 at the high school. So the size of the school. In the high school, they're able to cover because they have a different schedule. They're not with the same kids all day, so we can pull a teacher from a department. That's why I know Ann had said, they're not doing it at the high school or the middle school. With departments and same teachers, they're able to, beg, borrow, and steal, have them cover a period, owe them a period, another time, a prep or whatever they can do, free them up from their duty period, have them cover a class, things like that. So they get creative. It's just, you don't have that at the elementary school because everyone has their own set of kids and once you have adjoining rooms, you really can't watch another class. So it's a challenge. It's been a really rough time. But I think we're coming out of it, as Stacy mentioned. We're trying every strategy we can to get people on board. And I'm open to any others and any other solutions. If I had a solution that would have resolved this, I would have done it because I'm not trying to pick a fight. I don't want my employees to feel that they're undervalued or being used and abused for, it's really only because I do have confidence in them. We do hire well. We have, tutors that have bachelor's degrees and experience and knowledge, and they know the kids. And so when I'm thinking about what's best for kids, I have to think about those 18 to 22 kids in that class, in addition to the kids who are going to be missing out on, the tiered interventions and supports from tutors, because it's a scale. You help one and the other gets impacted. But so where's that? There's really no middle. You're kind of doing your best to, piece it together. And I hope it's, like I said, I hope this is we're coming to an end of it. And I can meet with my principals again and we've tried to come up with plans or ways of avoiding it. There didn't seem to be, especially like PPT where you're covered for half an hour. I can understand the full day and coming in earlier and that being really disruptive. But if you're providing tier 1 support and you're not scheduled for a tier 2 interventions that period, and you need a 30-minute coverage of a classroom who has a teacher has a PPT responsibility, there may only be 15 minutes. It may not be the full half hour. It would be nice to have that flexibility to have our tutors being able to do that. I can understand full day coverages and that being a challenge.
In the past, tutors did not provide that kind of coverage, even for just the PPTs. No.
How do they, do you know how they
Yeah,
cover that? Yeah.
I was gonna ask Stephen, because that, and pardon, remember, I'm not a teacher. I don't, I don't work in education. So if I'm saying something stupid, let me know.
You never say anything.
But if, I mean, do you really need a fully certified sub to cover a 30-minute PPT?
No.
Isn't that more of a, hey, let's just keep these kids quiet until the teacher comes back type of situation?
I mean, we want to keep them engaged in whatever activity was planned for that time period. We don't need a fully certified sub.
Or maybe it happens, you know, often enough in a particular class that it does need that type. Again, I'm just trying to.
No, I know what you're saying. You know, we don't need a fully certified teacher for that short period of time. And, you know, a lot of our tutors aren't fully certified. So we've used tutors who are not fully certified to cover for full days. And they do a good job because they have experience with the kids and they know how to, they've been around long enough, many of them, to probably be a teacher if they had just had the certification, you know, if they wanted to, or some of them have certification and they chose the tutoring side of things. But yeah, so it's really the goal is to have minimum impact on the kids. And there's impact both directions. I understand that. So, you know, I don't know the best solution, but I don't know, you know, Chairwoman Tyrell, if you wanted to caucus and invite anybody in, it's up to you. If Mr. Pizarro needs to talk with his group at all, I know it's really more up to the board to know if you have enough facts to make a decision or information, or if you want, you know, it's up to you.
Just one more thought that I had. So if the hiring situation improves based on kind of what Stacy mentioned and the relaxing of the requirement of the bachelor's degree to get building subs, I'm wondering if we could at the elementary level, you know, put an additional sub in each building, if that's something that we could do that might also, you know, give us a buffer.
Yeah. You know, in the past, I would say that wouldn't work because we couldn't even get the 3 that we needed in the elementary.
Yeah, I know, right.
But now maybe, you know, we could try to recruit a 4th to cover, especially this year. You know, sometimes our teachers have been out for, you know, something related to perhaps a family member with a child who's quarantined for COVID exposure, or, you know, so we do have higher absences for a number of reasons. So it could be a temporary solution. I'm not opposed to that at all. It's, you know, an additional sub in each school.
And I know I'm saying hire, like, you know, hire another person, just like we can pick them out of the air. I get that the whole issue is that we just can't hire enough people.
Right.
That's, and as everybody has said, it's not just us, it's everybody in every line of work. And that's a big issue. But if it does indeed start to get a little better because of that, you know, because of the change in requirements and whatnot, that might be, you know, part of an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see if the board, if we can go into an executive session, have a discussion, see where we fall on this. So what I understand from the technological side of things is that the board members were given a link, correct? That's in our calendars.
Yeah, you should have received a Google Meet link for the
Google Meet,
board, just for the board, and then you can invite in, if you want to invite someone in, that's up to you. You know, because I'm the one that received the grievance, so I would say it wouldn't be proper for me to go in, but if you want to invite others in, that's up to you. And what we could do is just set a time to come back to this link. We could all sign off now and then sign back on this link, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Dan is still with us or not, but I think this link is still live, and we can, although it's being, I'm not sure how that works. It's live, so.
I'll keep the meeting running. I'm just going to put up a slide while you adjourn.
Okay.
And then when you guys come back in, just let me know and I'll switch it back to video.
The voice from above that has all the answers. Thank you, Dan.
No problem.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm not seeing the Google Meet.
Is it in your calendar? If you look at your,
Yeah, it was an email from Steve we got this morning.
wait a minute, let me see.
I
It
see
should have
my,
been, it should have been from Joan, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, it says me, it says organizer me.
Yeah, from Steve.
okay, I see it now. I had, yeah, I can see
Joan,
my calendar.
yeah.
So what I'd like to do is invite Stacy, and is Dave here, but he's under your name? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, he hadn't received the Zoom link, so I shared it with him, so he's using my link, so it's
Okay.
actually Dave. Dave, you want to verify that with your voice?
Yeah, I'm here as
Okay.
Steve.
All right, so I would like to have, to go
I
into,
don't see it.
and ask Stacy and Dave to join us.
Or and the rest of us would just, I guess, turn off our cameras and microphones until
Yeah, I guess,
until
yeah,
you come back in. And then
yeah,
we'll go back in public session for you to share any outcomes.
all right. Thank you. Meet everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. We're coming back in from our executive session, so.
Can't start my video for some reason.
Hmm. I think everybody's back. Am I correct? Are we seeing
I believe
anybody?
so.
I don't know if
I don't-
Ann is there.
I don't see Ann. Yeah.
I mean,
And,
is there, but she may be,
oh, yeah.
doesn't realize that we're back.
There she is.
There she is. Oh, she popped up in the
For some
other.
reason I can't start my video, but if you can hear me, that's fine.
Yep, we can hear you.
You hear you?
All right.
You don't want to see my bald head anyway.
All right, so we are coming back out into open session, and in a moment, we're going to vote. I just want you to know that we had a conversation, you know, about the seriousness of this situation. We understand this is not an ideal situation at all. However, if we were to hold up this agreement, what would happen, I assume tomorrow, is that we may have classrooms of kids with nobody in there. And we just cannot, we can't do that either. But we do want to take this, you know, to put a few additional steps in place that are going to hopefully make it so that we're going to lessen the impact. The first thing is that we're trying to grapple with how, you know, how things were at the start of the year and how they are improving. We really want to see that in real time. So the board is going to receive a weekly update with any tutor substitution schedules that have happened. Stacy and the principals will be able to pull that together and send that to us. So we'll be able to see exactly how often this is occurring going forward. We know that there is definitely some improvement on the horizon with getting the additional building subs and daily subs. And we did discuss potentially raising the rate, although it sounds like our rates aren't the issue. It's just there aren't enough, you know, people seeking employment. So we know that that's part of the issue. We are going to continue to make sure that we rotate the monitors, I mean, the tutors, so that no one would be unduly burdened, and hopefully this won't happen frequently to anyone. And also the practice of sharing the building subs. So that means the high school and the middle school subs could get pulled to the elementary schools to prevent a tutor from having to go into a classroom. So those are some of the things that we discussed. And if, you know, if we see this weekly situation, if we continue to have to use subs, we may discuss further some of the other options, although, you know, I mean, none of us want tutors to have to do, you know, this kind of work, because that's not what you're meant to do. And we want everyone to be able to, you know, fulfill all the practices that we're hoping, you know, people will do with their daily job. I want tutors to do what tutors are supposed to do. And our only problem is we just are at this point where we have no, you know, there's no good solution here, because we also can't have classrooms with nobody in them. So with that, I'm going to call for a motion on the grievance.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Tyrell.
Yep.
Before you vote, there is one issue there that's it's kind of important, because I kind of see where you're going, and I can understand, but we do have a contractual timeline that needs to be followed in terms of arbitration. Now, I'm hearing from what you're saying that you're taking some measures and you want to see how they pan out.
Mhm.
And I can understand that, but that would have to come with a waiver of timelines on our end. Because otherwise, we have 5 days
Let's see.
to submit an arbitration. So again, in the interest of cooperation, if that's where we're going, then I would ask for a waiver of timelines. Otherwise, I'm 5 days from now, or less than that, I'm gonna have to go to the board.
Gotcha. Would we work that into our motion? That's what I'm not sure of.
I think you would, just depending on what your motion is, if it's requiring what you said as far as a trial period and monitoring period, that you would waive the timelines for the required timelines during which CSEA would seek arbitration to allow us to, try to address the problem, if that's what I'm understanding. The other thing, I wasn't in your meeting, but the other thing I thought of is we could also make sure that we put together, I could ask principals to put together, based on what you're saying, a schedule of basically who's on deck. So you'd have at least, because I heard Mr. Clark, and you'd have at least some idea of when you're up next. So if it does happen, we're hoping it doesn't have to happen anymore. And I see the half-hour coverage is very different than subbing. That's classroom coverage. It's not like a full-day sub or half-day sub. So I don't see that as in the same. I think that still has to happen for PPTs and such. It's tier one. It's tier one coverage, which is part of the job description and contract. There's no other solution for that. I don't know how they did it in the past, but I just wanted to put that in there. But as far as having predictability, I think we could work on that with the principals. So there's a schedule of sorts, like if we have to do this again, this is the order we would follow, if that helps. But that's neither here nor there. Just thought I would throw that in there as something that I thought of while you were.
Yeah, that could be something that could at least help predictability. And as you said, hopefully it'll be a non-issue, but.
Yeah.
Frank? May I add in something?
Sure.
I think I would feel comfortable with a definition of what is fair and equitable rotation. Is that, if I'm thinking of a coworker who got pulled to cover for a teacher for 3 straight days. Are we talking per job? Okay, so maybe I get pulled and my job is a day, but then perhaps the next person who gets pulled for a job is 3 days. So to some, that may not seem equitable. So I'm just concerned about what equitable rotation means.
Now, I would talk about the principals, but I don't think we have any coverages more than a day this year, and I don't anticipate. I don't want that to happen. I'm opposed to that happening. So I don't want a tutor covering a class for 3 days. Last year was out of sheer desperation and a lack of any other alternative, but I think we're in a place where we won't see that happen. But I understand what you're saying. So if someone's
unfortunately, a coworker did substitute 3 straight days at
this
top.
year
Yes,
for a full day.
that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay.
And I hopefully should have some data.
And we did inform me of that, yes. So although I have a lot of hope, I don't know if things always carry through, unfortunately, for whatever reason. It's not necessarily intentional, but I don't think it always happens that way.
I guess I'm just confused because I only have the person who's the most coverage at Toflon was 2 days and they were separated. That was Christine Fagan. She had October 6th and October 7th. So it looks like there were 2 days consecutive. I see that one. But anyway, all right, that's neither here nor there. I hope that, now that we have more subs, I know that Toflon's picked up another sub or two. We're hopefully in a better situation, but,
I mean,
so I
and
don't,
I could see maybe there might be a time when, Toflon could be in need and maybe Wheeler doesn't need its third person too. There may be a way that certainly at the high school and the middle school, we might have a little more flexibility, but I don't know if they've been doing that, using that practice all year. And if that's something that's in place, I'm thinking that might also be part of the solution. I don't think there's any one thing that's going to be the solution. I think it's going to be a piecemeal of, a lot of different efforts. All right. So Foster, you're going to make a motion, but you're
Yes,
add to your motion that we're going to waive the required timeline.
yes. What I'd like to do, Madam Chairman, is to move that we do deny the grievance, but allowing the grieving party to have a waiver of the timeline so that that they would have that extra time and would not be constrained by the current 5 days.
To apply for arbitration.
Right, it's 5 work days from the date of your response, which would be today, I guess.
Yeah, but what we're doing, we're granting you a waiver of that by this motion.
So that's the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second, Becky. All right. Are there any comments or questions on the part of the board?
Other than I think it is a feeling of the board that we really do understand that this is really puts our tutors in a comfortable position, and we're making every possible effort to avoid having to do this in the future.
All right, I'm going to ask vote.
so Becky, the minutes will reflect the purpose for the denying the grievance, and so the motion doesn't have to include that, correct? So it would just, it's for the sake of taking steps to address it and studying it over time. So that's why the time waiver. So, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to ask all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, hearing none. All right. So that kind of concludes our business. Hoping that, we're going to start hearing much improved situations with this, and we'll get a better feeling for how quickly it can be resolved, hopefully very quickly. All right. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chairman, I move we adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
And I would also like to personally thank both Jennifer and Ann for their contribution to this evening. I think that they did bring to our attention some very significant facts and information.
Thank you. I appreciate that all of you took time to listen to us this evening. We appreciate it.
We appreciate your time, you and Jennifer as well. Thank you. And thank you, Frank.
Oh yeah, Frank, yes.
He's okay too. Thanks to the board members. I know Brent and Becky have a big night tonight and elections tomorrow. So taking a couple hours out of your night tonight, you're probably going to go out and campaign after this, but I don't know, maybe you're all done. So thanks for agreeing to this meeting at this time. I know it's a busy time for our local politicians, board members. So thank you.
Yeah. Everybody do remember to vote tomorrow.
Jennifer and Ann, I sent you a link. So I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Good
Good night.
night.